Hello, miladies of inestimable value. Some people think they're playing chess, until a Sigma female flips the board and reveals they were actually pieces. Most people have no idea what they unleash when they try to hurt a Sigma female. They assume she'll react like everyone else, argue, panic, break down, or beg for closure. But here's the harsh truth. Sigma females don't fall apart. They silently reroute their entire life in a way that makes your attack blow up in your own face. And it's not magic or mystery, it's psychology. Studies show that people who operate independently, observe quietly, and think long before acting are the least likely to be emotionally manipulated, and the most likely to rebound stronger than before. That is the Sigma female in a nutshell, a quiet system that becomes lethal once triggered. You might think hurting her gives you power, but in reality, it gives her clarity, direction, and a new level of emotional coldness that you definitely didn't sign up for. And here's the funny part. The moment you try to damage her, you become the accidental villain in a story she doesn't even bother reading. She'll just close the book, put it back on the shelf, and leave you arguing with the table of contents. This video exposes the 12 brutally honest, psychologically sharp, and unexpectedly ironic ways that trying to hurt a Sigma female backfires hard. Get ready, because once you hear these, you'll understand why crossing her isn't just a mistake. It's a self-inflicted disaster disguised as a bold move. Number 1. She has a level of self-possession that makes your attack look childish. A Sigma female operates on a level that most people can't even perceive. She carries herself with a quiet, unwavering self-possession that comes from years of observing, learning, and mastering her own emotions. When someone tries to hurt her, it doesn't rattle her. She doesn't flare up, she doesn't shout, she doesn't even flinch in a way you can measure. The energy she radiates is so controlled, so deliberate, that any attempt to destabilize her ends up exposing the immaturity or impulsiveness of the person attacking. It's not arrogance, it's an internal discipline so refined that insults, betrayals, or manipulations simply slide off her. You might think your words or actions are cutting, but against a Sigma female, they look clumsy, almost laughable. Her calmness is like a mirror that reflects not only your behavior, but also your lack of control. She makes your attempts to hurt her seem petty, desperate, or even childish. And the more you try to escalate, the more obvious it becomes. Not that she's unshakable, but that your energy is misaligned, chaotic, and transparent. This self-possession comes with an invisible power. You can't provoke her, and you certainly can't manipulate her into reacting the way you expect. Every step you take to damage her credibility or confidence only emphasizes the contrast between your impulsive reaction and her composed mastery. In essence, by attacking her, you are unintentionally highlighting your own vulnerabilities while she remains untouchable. It's fascinating because this isn't about showing strength through confrontation. It's about strength through absence of reaction, through unwavering confidence in herself. She doesn't have to prove anything or retaliate because her presence alone communicates control, balance, and mastery. And while you're busy trying to hurt her, the truth is she's silently demonstrating a level of maturity and self-control that leaves your efforts looking immature. In the game of emotional power, she isn't even playing your game. She's in a league above, and trying to hurt her only reveals how out of your depth you really are. Number 2. She converts pain into psychological advantage. When a Sigma female experiences hurt, she doesn't let it sit and fester. She doesn't complain, lash out, or waste energy on revenge the way most people do. Instead, she turns it into something far more dangerous. An advantage. Every insult, betrayal, or slight is carefully analyzed, broken down, and stored. She studies the source, the intention, and the underlying motives, and in doing so, she transforms pain into a kind of weaponized understanding. You might think you've left a mark, but what you've actually done is hand her the tools to navigate the world even more strategically. Her mind works like a finely tuned instrument. While you're replaying the moment hoping it hurt her, she's dissecting it, learning from it, and figuring out how to avoid similar pitfalls in the future. She doesn't need to respond immediately. The power lies in her patience and clarity. Pain becomes a lesson she can use not only to protect herself, but to predict, counter, and outmaneuver anyone who might try to harm her again. You think you caused damage, but what you really did was give her a deeper insight into human behavior, including your own. The most unsettling part is that she does this without malice. She isn't trying to hurt you back. She's simply evolving beyond the situation. Every attempt to wound her adds a layer to her psychological armor. By the time she interacts with you, or anyone like you again, she is sharper, calmer, and more untouchable than before. What seemed like a vulnerability has been converted into a strength. You're not just failing to hurt her, you're actively strengthening her position. Her ability to convert pain into advantage is subtle but devastating. She doesn't need to prove her superiority. It simply becomes apparent through her composure, her foresight, and her refusal to let emotional attacks dictate her life. Trying to hurt a Sigma female doesn't just backfire, it upgrades her, leaving you exposed, predictable, and powerless in comparison. Number 3, you don't lose her, you lose the version of yourself. You were around her. When a Sigma female exits your life, it's not just her absence you feel, it's the sudden collapse of the version of yourself that existed in her presence. Sigma females have an almost invisible way of shaping the people around them without controlling them. Their energy, intelligence, and emotional steadiness elevate those who interact with them, often without either party fully realizing it. You don't notice it at first, but you perform better, think sharper, and carry yourself with more composure simply because she's there. She reflects your potential back to you, silently holding up a standard that challenges you to rise. When you try to hurt her, the tables turn. You might succeed in driving her away, but what you don't anticipate is the immediate personal fallout. Suddenly, the mirror she provided disappears, and the gaps she covered in your own behavior become painfully clear. The habits you ignored, the insecurities you buried, the laziness or arrogance you thought went unnoticed, all of it comes into sharp focus. You lose more than a relationship. You lose the elevated version of yourself that existed only in her orbit. It's not punishment, it's reality. Sigma females expose the difference between who you are and who you could be, and their absence exposes it even more. People often think losing a Sigma female is a loss for her, but in truth, it's a recalibration for you, a harsh one. The world feels heavier, your decisions feel flatter, and your emotional intelligence feels diminished because the subtle force that shaped your better self is gone. Trying to hurt a Sigma female, therefore, isn't just self-defeating in terms of conflict, it's self-defeating in terms of personal growth. The version of yourself that thrived in her presence vanishes, leaving you to reckon with who you are without her influence. She walks away untouched, evolved and strategically untouchable, while you're left scrambling in the shadows of the potential you squandered. The irony is brutal. In attempting to destabilize her, you destabilize yourself, and that loss is far deeper than any superficial victory could ever compensate for. Number 4. She doesn't retaliate. She redesigns the entire game. A Sigma female doesn't waste energy on petty revenge. She doesn't react the way most people expect, because her mind doesn't operate on impulse or emotion. It operates on strategy. When someone tries to hurt her, she doesn't just defend herself. She reconfigures the entire situation so that the power dynamic shifts completely in her favor. Your attacks, your schemes, and your attempts to control or destabilize her become irrelevant, like playing chess on a board where she's already moved the pieces without you noticing. This is what makes her so dangerous without ever raising a hand. She observes, she analyzes, and she adapts. Every weakness you thought you could exploit, every misstep you tried to use against her, gets absorbed and transformed into an opportunity for her to reinforce her position. You might think you're engaged in a battle with her, but in reality, she's rewriting the rules, shifting the lines, and changing the terrain while you're still trying to execute your first move. Her power is subtle yet absolute. By not retaliating in the way you expect, she makes your actions irrelevant and your influence meaningless. The more you try to force a reaction, the more you reveal your own limitations, while she remains calm, untouchable, and in control. She doesn't need to fight you. She simply ensures that your strategies backfire on themselves. This is why hurting a Sigma female is never just a personal failure. It's a total strategic collapse on your part. You lose not only the battle you thought you were fighting, but the entire context in which you thought you held power. She doesn't need to raise her voice, make threats, or prove herself. Her quiet, calculated responses, and often her complete lack of visible response, are enough to make your attempts at dominance meaningless. In short, a Sigma female doesn't get even because she doesn't need to. She simply changes the game so completely that you're left trying to play by rules that no longer exist, and by the time you realize it, you've already lost everything you thought you had. Number 5. Your attack. Accidentally forces her into her highest operating mode. Sigma females aren't just resilient, they're adaptive to a degree that most people can't comprehend. When someone tries to hurt them, it doesn't push them down. It activates a side of them that's sharper, faster, and more focused than usual. Every insult, betrayal, or attempt at manipulation inadvertently triggers what could be called their hyper-clarity state. In this mode, her mind operates at peak efficiency, analyzing motives, consequences, and opportunities with surgical precision. What makes this so dangerous for the person trying to hurt her is that they think they're gaining control or causing damage. In reality, they're sharpening her edge. Your attack becomes the catalyst that forces her to operate beyond her usual limits. She becomes colder, more strategic, and more unshakable, not just emotionally but in every aspect of her decision-making. Where she might have tolerated minor slights before, now she sees every pattern, every weakness, every hidden agenda, and she doesn't just see it, she leverages it. This is why attempts to destabilize a Sigma female often backfire spectacularly. The energy you pour into trying to hurt her doesn't weaken her. It strengthens her resolve and amplifies her mental acuity. You aren't confronting the same person you thought you were. You've activated a higher version, one who doesn't play by conventional rules and doesn't allow mistakes from anyone, including you. The irony is brutal. In trying to inflict pain, you essentially hand her the very conditions she thrives under. Your actions create the pressure that sharpens her instincts, clarifies her vision, and reinforces her independence. By the time you realize what you've done, she's already operating several steps ahead, untouchable, and fully aware of the consequences of your behavior, not just for her, but for yourself. Your attack doesn't break her. It upgrades her, leaving you exposed in ways you never intended. Number 6. She removes her emotional access from you, permanently. When a Sigma female decides someone has crossed a line, it isn't a temporary freeze or a pause in connection. Most people might withdraw for a while, sulk, or test the waters before deciding how to feel. A Sigma female doesn't work that way. She doesn't pause her emotions. She deletes access entirely. Once she perceives that someone has betrayed her trust or tried to hurt her, she locks that person out of her inner world in a way that's permanent and absolute. This isn't about coldness for the sake of being cold. It's about survival, self-respect, and efficiency. Sigma females understand that lingering attachment or partial forgiveness only gives leverage to people who don't deserve it. By removing emotional access, she ensures that you can no longer manipulate her, guilt her, or pull on her feelings. The emotional pathway that allowed closeness, vulnerability, or intimacy is gone, and you have no way of reconnecting it. The danger for the person who tries to hurt her is that this severance doesn't come with fanfare or confrontation. She doesn't argue, she doesn't make threats, and she doesn't explain herself. You simply discover over time that the part of her that once cared, trusted, or opened up to you is gone, and she has no intention of bringing it back. You realize too late that what you thought was a relationship, a connection, or influence over her was contingent on her choice to allow it. Once this emotional access is removed, there's no reset button, no chance for reconciliation on your terms. You aren't just facing the absence of her presence. You're facing the permanent loss of her emotional engagement. And because Sigma females don't dwell on the past, she moves forward without you, untouched by the conflict you created. The cruel truth is that you don't just lose influence. You lose the ability to ever matter to her in the way you once did. By trying to hurt her, you've handed her the ultimate power, the power to erase you from the emotional landscape of her life completely and permanently. Number 7. She documents patterns, not moments. A Sigma female doesn't react to isolated incidents the way most people do. An insult, a betrayal, or a moment of weakness isn't just a fleeting event to her. It's a data point in a much larger system. She doesn't waste energy over a single mistake or a one-time slight. Instead, she observes, records, and analyzes behavior over time, looking for patterns, triggers, and recurring motives. Each action you take is like a piece of a puzzle she's quietly assembling, and every puzzle piece adds to her understanding of who you really are. This ability makes her nearly impossible to manipulate. While most people react emotionally and forget, she builds a living blueprint of your behavior. By the time she has enough information, she can predict how you will act in almost any situation, often before you even realize your own impulses. Your attempts to control, deceive, or hurt her become predictable and therefore ineffective, because she's already adjusted her approach based on the pattern she's documented. The danger of this for the person trying to harm her is that your behavior doesn't just reflect poorly in isolated moments, it exposes the underlying structure of your personality. Sigma females can see through inconsistencies, detect hidden motives, and identify patterns that reveal more about you than you ever intended. What you thought was clever or subtle manipulation is, in her eyes, simply a predictable repeat in a larger sequence she already understands. This isn't about grudges or revenge. She isn't reacting emotionally in the moment. Instead, she's creating a map, a strategy, and a framework that ensures you can't catch her off guard again. The more you repeat behaviors, good, bad, or manipulative, the clearer the picture becomes. By the time she fully understands the pattern, your influence over her is gone, your leverage evaporates, and you've unwittingly handed her insight that protects her far beyond any single interaction. In trying to hurt her, you've effectively educated her on exactly how you operate, and that knowledge becomes your undoing. Number 8. She cuts off her soft side like it's a luxury item. A Sigma female doesn't operate on the usual rules of emotional dependency. She knows her softness, her empathy, her vulnerability, her willingness to connect is a choice, not a requirement. When someone tries to hurt her, betray her, or manipulate her, she doesn't let that side of herself linger where it can be exploited. She simply turns it off, like flipping a switch, and the softness that once made her accessible disappears entirely. This makes her impossible to hurt the way most people expect. You might think that by pushing her buttons or attacking her emotionally, you'll find cracks to exploit. But in reality, you're attempting to engage with a version of her that no longer exists. The part of her that would feel guilt, shame, or fear for your judgment is gone. You're left interacting with a figure who is calm, composed, and unbothered, a version of her that doesn't need approval, affection, or validation to function. The danger here is subtle, but devastating. Most people try to manipulate others by appealing to their emotions, knowing that everyone has a soft side somewhere. With a Sigma female, that strategy fails because she chooses when and where to reveal vulnerability. The moment you attempt to harm her, you inadvertently trigger the very mechanism that protects her most: detachment. Your attacks hit nothing tangible. You're fighting shadows, echoes, and reflections, but there's no real access point to cause damage. She treats her soft side as a luxury, not a necessity. It's a tool reserved for people who respect her, for situations that merit trust, or for moments when vulnerability is strategic, not exploitable. By trying to hurt her, you force her to reserve that luxury entirely for herself, leaving you in the cold, confused, and powerless. In short, you don't just fail to harm her, you lose the very thing you assumed you could touch, and you realize too late that the Sigma female's strength isn't in what she shows, but in what she chooses not to show. Number 9. You force her to recalculate her life without you, and she likes the new version. When someone tries to hurt a Sigma female, it doesn't destabilize her. It activates a complete mental recalibration. She doesn't spiral, panic, or obsess over the loss. Instead, she initiates what could be called a system update, analyzing every aspect of her life, reassessing her priorities, and reevaluating the people, habits, and situations she allows into her space. Your attempt to hurt her doesn't weaken her. It becomes the trigger that forces her to upgrade her life, making it sharper, cleaner, and more strategically aligned with her goals. The fascinating and terrifying part for the person who tried to cause damage is that the Sigma female often emerges stronger and more autonomous than before. By attempting to hurt her, you create the conditions for her to evaluate which connections are genuinely beneficial and which are merely distractions. The updated version of her is not just untouchable emotionally. She has consciously removed anyone who drains energy, manipulates, or disrespects her. Your presence, once assumed to be influential, becomes obsolete. This recalibration isn't reactive. It's proactive. She doesn't dwell on the negative energy you brought. She extracts the lesson, optimizes her emotional and mental systems, and moves forward in a way that leaves zero space for toxicity. Every habit, relationship, or attachment that was holding her back is re-examined and either reinforced with value or completely discarded. The Sigma female doesn't just survive the attempt to hurt her, she thrives because of it. The irony is brutal. What you thought would destabilize her actually catalyzes her growth. You force her to adapt, evolve, and elevate her life, and in doing so, you remove yourself from the equation entirely. By trying to harm her, you inadvertently create a version of her that is stronger, smarter, and more detached, a version that has zero emotional bandwidth for anyone who operates like you. The harsh truth is that your attack doesn't just backfire. It designs a life from which you are entirely excluded, leaving her untouchable and unapologetically elevated. Number 10. She treats your betrayal as data, not drama. A Sigma female doesn't operate on the emotional roller coaster that most people expect when betrayal or manipulation occurs. You might assume that hurting her would provoke outrage, tears, or confrontation, but she doesn't react that way. Instead, she approaches your actions with a cold, analytical mind. Every slight, every lie, Every betrayal is catalogued not as a personal wound, but as data, information that she can study, decode, and ultimately use to her advantage. Your attempts to shake her emotionally fail because she has no interest in indulging drama. She doesn't replay the moment for sympathy or validation. She absorbs it silently, dissects the intent, identifies patterns, and adds it to her mental map of who you are. By the time most people would be ruminating over hurt feelings, she has already processed the event and integrated it into her understanding of your behavior. She knows your tendencies, your methods, and even your weaknesses more clearly than you do yourself. This is what makes her so difficult to manipulate or control. While others might react impulsively, giving you a chance to exploit the situation further, she transforms every betrayal into insight. You think you've destabilized her, but in reality, you've handed her the keys to predict your future moves, anticipate your next attempt at control, and protect herself in ways you can't even see. The brilliance of this approach is subtle, yet devastating. There's no public confrontation, no dramatic retaliation, just a quiet, unshakable advantage. She has turned your effort to harm her into intelligence she can use strategically. What you meant as a weapon against her becomes your own exposure, your patterns laid bare, and your influence permanently diminished. In the end, your betrayal doesn't hurt her, it educates her, and while you hope to destabilize, confuse, or dominate, she emerges sharper, more prepared, and untouchable, leaving you unwittingly vulnerable in the very battlefield you thought you controlled. Number 11. She doesn't argue. She erases you. A Sigma female doesn't play the games most people expect when conflict arises. She doesn't argue, beg for validation, or engage in petty back and forth. When someone tries to hurt her, her response isn't visible. It's the complete absence of response. She removes herself entirely from the situation, the relationship, or the person who tried to destabilize her, and that absence is more devastating than any argument, insult, or revenge could ever be. Most people mistake confrontation for power. They assume that the louder, harsher, or more dramatic response signals control. But the Sigma female operates differently. She understands that engagement often validates the attacker, giving them a stage to continue their behavior. By choosing to withdraw instead, she doesn't just protect herself, she undermines the attacker's entire strategy without lifting a finger. Her silence becomes a form of dominance, one that is subtle yet more psychologically damaging than any visible retaliation. Her erasure isn't impulsive, it's intentional and precise. You'll spend energy trying to provoke her, wondering if she feels the same hurt or frustration you intended to cause, only to discover that she has mentally and physically removed you from her orbit. The connections you relied on, the influence you thought you had, the access to her trust and attention, it's all gone. And unlike revenge, which can be messy, drawn out, and ultimately futile, her absence leaves nothing for you to grasp onto. This is the cruel brilliance of a Sigma female. She doesn't give closure, she doesn't fight back in ways you expect, and she doesn't offer excuses. She simply disappears from the parts of her life that you occupied, and in doing so, she makes you face the consequences of your actions on your own. The emptiness she leaves behind, the quiet distance, the undeniable lack of engagement, these are the most effective weapons a Sigma female has. In trying to hurt her, you create your own punishment, a world in which she no longer exists for you, and where your attempts at control or influence have already failed. Number 12. She carries no guilt about walking away. A Sigma female doesn't linger in toxic relationships, and she certainly doesn't drag herself through emotional torment out of obligation or guilt. While most people would second-guess, rationalize, or feel remorse about ending a connection, she experiences none of that. Walking away is simply a decision, a logical, deliberate act to preserve her energy, her focus, and her sanity. She doesn't question whether she should stay to give someone another chance or hope that things might improve. Once she decides a person or situation is harmful, she removes herself completely, without hesitation or emotional penalty. This level of detachment is terrifying for those who try to hurt her. You might expect drama, negotiation, or reconciliation. You might even assume that your influence or presence gives you some hold over her emotions. But once a Sigma female decides to cut you off, it's absolute. There is no backtracking, no reconsideration, no chance to manipulate her into staying. She doesn't dwell on your intentions or your regrets. Your attempts to guilt her, provoke her, or reclaim your place in her life are meaningless because she doesn't owe anyone continued access to her energy. Her lack of guilt is not coldness. It's self-preservation on a level most people can't comprehend. She values herself and her peace too highly to tolerate toxicity, and she knows that compromise in such situations only compromises her life. Walking away is her way of maintaining control without confrontation. She doesn't need drama to assert power. She simply removes what doesn't serve her. The consequence is absolute. If you tried to hurt her, you've already lost. There's no second chance, no rematch, no reconciliation that bends to your will. By leaving, she establishes boundaries that cannot be crossed, and her absence communicates more than any argument ever could. The Sigma female doesn't carry guilt because she knows that maintaining her integrity and peace is more valuable than maintaining the presence of someone who disrespected her. In cutting you off, she doesn't just protect herself. She rewrites the rules of engagement entirely, leaving you powerless and irrelevant. Conclusion. Hurting a Sigma female isn't just a miscalculation. It's a strategic disaster for anyone who underestimates her. Every attempt to wound her, manipulate her, or provoke a reaction doesn't weaken her. It strengthens her in ways most people can't even perceive. She doesn't retaliate, argue, or dwell in drama. She adapts, recalibrates, and elevates herself, often leaving the person who tried to harm her exposed, predictable, and irrelevant. From erasing emotional access to turning pain into advantage, from exposing your weaknesses to redesigning the entire battlefield, the Sigma female operates on a level that few can understand, and even fewer can challenge. What makes her truly formidable is the quiet precision of her power. She doesn't need to fight to win. She doesn't need to prove herself to dominate. Her strength lies in her self-possession, her strategic clarity, and her ability to move through life untethered by the chaos others create. Every action you take against her is catalogued, analyzed, and often converted into insight that leaves you several steps behind, wondering where your influence went. She doesn't just survive your attacks. She evolves because of them, leaving you to reckon with the consequences of your own behavior long after she's moved on. The harsh truth is this: trying to hurt a Sigma female isn't just risky. It's self-destructive. You don't just fail to destabilize her, you lose access to a presence that was quietly elevating your own life. You expose weaknesses you never saw, and you inadvertently give her the clarity and power to thrive without you. Fallout of your miscalculation. If you want to truly understand the dynamics of power, control, and the unparalleled strength of a Sigma female, this is just the beginning. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more deep dives into Sigma psychology. Like this video if it opened your eyes, comment with your thoughts or experiences, and share it with anyone who underestimates the quiet yet unstoppable power of a Sigma female. Your awareness of these truths might just be the edge you need in a world full of misjudgments.